Okay, so just, having a proper rundown of this slide. By now you should know that overheads refer to your indirect costs, okay? And as a result of this, these costs cannot be allocated directly, right? So this is in contrast to your direct materials and your direct labor, which can be allocated, directly to that product, hence the name direct material and direct labor. So if you're looking at, for example, a product which is made out of wood, then the cost of the wood per product would be directly allocated to that product. So if you have one desk which requires 5 kilograms of wood at 100 Rand per kilogram, it's going to be 5 times 100, which is 500 Rand, and that's per unit. Okay, so it's very straightforward, not difficult to allocate. If it takes a laborer 1 hour to make or to assemble the furniture together, and that laborer's cost is 100 Rand an hour, then it's going to be 100 times 1, which is 100 Rand. So with the direct costs, it's very easy to allocate these. With the indirect costs, however, it's not, because you've just got a whole bunch of costs together and they relate to the product but not directly, and now you need to find a way of allocating these costs to the product. Okay, so if you're looking at our costs like our depreciation, factory rental, the water and electricity of the factory, that type of thing, it makes it a bit difficult. How do you allocate that specifically to a product? So those are the types of things that need to be considered. So a common thing or a common approach is to use a budgeted overhead recovery rate and to allocate the costs in this method, right? So there's 3 ways in which you can do this. You can use a blanket wide rate, which is the easiest one, but it's the most inaccurate one. A departmental overhead rate and an activity-based overhead rate. Okay, departmental one gets a bit more specific, with regards to the department in which the product actually passes through. So each department will have its own overhead rates, and activity-based rate will basically just look at the activities that are comprised, or which make up the assembly and the production of the product, and getting an overhead recovery rate based on that. Okay. Now, when it comes to allocating overheads, there's 4 bits of information which are very important, right? The first one is your budgeted production overheads. The second one is your budgeted activity level. The third one is your actual activity level, and the fourth one is your actual production overheads, right? Now, these 4 will always be there, right? In some way or other, they will be given to you in a question, and they each have some sort of relevance, okay? So when you see this information, and a lot of students get confused because they will see this 4 bits of information and then they won't end up using all 4. But I promise you, it's not given to you for the sake of just being given to you. It's not given to you for the sake of just being there. It's not given to you because they try and trip you up and confuse you. It's not given to you just to, make the question look more complete. There are marks, and why I'm really emphasizing on this is because so many marks get thrown away, and especially at honors level, you simply cannot be doing that. It's actually like an unforgivable mistake as far as I am concerned. These are mistakes which you can make in your second year if you are studying management accounting, but you should not be making these mistakes in your honors year. Okay, so if you have been making them up to this point, please rectify it, move on, learn where you've done the wrong thing, and let's correct it now. But quite honestly, you guys should not be making mistakes when it comes to the treatment of this information and understanding how this information works. Okay, and I've actually done a very quick summary of what you need to know, or how to use this information. So A over B will give you your budgeted overhead recovery rates, okay, which is basically your budgeted production overheads. Remember, production overheads. So some questions will give you the total overhead, which is going to be administrative and production. You can only use the production part because we are looking at the costs of production. Okay, so it is your budgeted production overhead all over your budgeted activity level, which will either be your machine hours or labor hours typically. Okay, and the question will tell you this, so you're not going to have the luxury of choosing this on your own. You will be guided to what to use as a basis. The simple reason for this is because, can you imagine now if you are marking an exam or setting an exam, and each student now comes up with their own basis of allocation. I mean, if there's 10 available, you're going to have a nightmare when it comes to marking. And obviously there's only one that will be appropriate anyway, okay, typically. So this will be given to you. We're not going to try and slip you up there, and your lecturers and your whoever's setting your exam will not be doing those types of things either. You will know what is going to be your budgeted activity level. It will be pretty straightforward to see that. Okay. So that will give you your budgeted fixed overhead recovery rate. So that alone should tell you that you are using budgeted information. Okay. Now, once you've gotten your budgeted overhead recovery rates, when you multiply this by C being your actual activity level, okay, your actual machine hours, in other words, or your actual labor hours. See, this is where it comes in. Then you are getting your fixed overhead absorbed, okay? And this fixed overhead absorbed is sort of the next part of this, right? This is what you've actually now absorbed to the cost of your products using this budgeted overhead recovery rates, okay? So this is what has been absorbed, right? Now, the fourth part of this right now is to compare this to your actual production overheads, because there's what you've absorbed, but then there's a difference between what you have absorbed and what you should have absorbed. And what you should have absorbed is going to be your actual production overheads. So that's what you'll do. So you will look at it. So if, and that is where D comes in. Okay, so if your fixed overhead that has been absorbed is more than your actual overheads that have been incurred, then you've over-absorbed, right? Because you've absorbed more than has been incurred, so you have over-absorbed, right? If you have absorbed less than has been incurred, actually incurred, then you've under-absorbed. I think that's pretty straightforward to reason out, okay? So do you see how we end up using all four sources of information, right? And that's what you need to understand, okay? You need to be very mindful of these things. Okay. Now, looking at the plant-wide rate, this is not difficult to actually determine this, right? So with the plant-wide rate, when we use this method, it's basically entailing us assigning overheads to our cost objects using a single budgeted overhead recovery rate, right? And this will be for the entire organization as a whole. So it's not like we've got a different rate per department or per activity. You use one flat rate throughout, right? It's not the most accurate. It's something which you'd maybe find only in very small organizations or very simplistic organizations. But it's not really, for the purposes of accuracy, I wouldn't really say that it's a very good approach to use. So it's definitely not the first approach that you would be considering. But nonetheless, if you are using this rate, because some organizations do make use of this, then step by step what you would do is to firstly determine your budgeted production overheads. So remember, production overheads, and it must be your budgeted figures, right? So your production overhead, so either this is given to you, if it's not given to you, it'll be just be where they'll give you an example. So they'll say the total overhead costs are 10 million rand for the year. 60% of these relates to production. Yeah. So then you know that your production overheads will be 60% of the 10 million, which is basically 6 million. Okay, so simple enough. Then the next step is to determine the budgeted activity level to be used as a basis. This is, as I said, is going to be given to you guys, so you guys don't need to really do much guesswork or really try and figure this one out. It's going to be pretty straightforward. Don't stress about that at all. Okay, it's either going to be, from what typical examples will indicate is going to be your direct labor or your not your direct labor rather, but your labor hours or your machine hours. Okay, and remember, it's budgeted. From this, you're going to get your budgeted overhead recovery rate, which is basically taking your figure in 1 and dividing it by a figure in 2, and then you're allocating it to each product using this overhead recovery rate. So say, for example, we got a budgeted overhead recovery rate of 2 Rand per machine hour. Then you look at your product and see how many machine hours does it take to assemble one product, and maybe they'll say it takes 3 machine hours, right? So we've got 2 Rand per machine hour times 3 machine hours. It's going to be 6 Rand, and that's going to be our overhead per product. Okay. So let's look at an example of this. Okay, we said manufacturer limited is a manufacturer of widgets. Following information is available for the year ended 31 December 2019. So our budgeted production overheads is 5 million rand. Our budgeted machine hours is 1 million rand. The budgeted overhead recovery rates that needs to be used in order to allocate our overhead costs to the product is therefore 5 rand per machine hour. That's pretty straightforward, easy to calculate. This is essentially a free mark in your tests and examinations, which is why I'm really emphasizing on the point that you guys should not be, messing up these principles. I know in an exam it gets a bit more difficult, but the principle is still the same. So you guys need to make sure that you get it right. Okay, and then we go forward and we go on rather to say that if there were 2 machine hours that were required to produce 1 widget, then the overhead cost per unit, which will be required to be allocated, is going to be 10 rand, which is your 5 rand times 2. And again, it's a very arbitrary allocation. It's not the ideal way of allocating production overheads, but it is the most simplistic one. So again, remember the cost versus benefits approach and the requirement. That's going to be very, very relevant in a situation like this when it comes to allocating your production overheads, because while ABC is the most accurate, it's a very costly way of doing it, and of doing the allocation. And you as a financial manager would need to determine whether the cost of doing it is actually worth any benefit that's going to be derived from incurring this type of cost and the effort that's involved as well. So you got to bear that in mind. So is it worth your effort? Both in terms of your time and your money, is it worth it? So that's something that you need to look at. So it's something that you need to really look around. It's going to vary from industry to industry, so there's no one right answer, but it's definitely a consideration that needs to be taken seriously. Okay. Then our over-under recovery of production overheads. So remember, I said that if we have over-absorbed our production overheads, meaning that we've absorbed more than we actually incurred, we had an over-recovery, and if we absorbed less, then we actually incurred, we had an under-recovery. So this is an example of this now. So we said company A uses a budgeted overhead absorption rate of 250 per machine hour based on 30,000 budgeted machine hours for the period. Right, so we've got our budgeted overhead recovery rate, we've got our budgeted machine hours. The actual overhead expenditure for the same period amounted to 120,000, so that's our actual overheads, and 35,000 is our actual machine hours. Okay, so determine the fixed overhead absorbed for the period and the fixed overhead over or under allocated for the period. Right, so the fixed overhead absorbed for the period is straightforward, very easy to calculate. It's just going to be our budgeted overhead recovery rates times our actual level of activity, which is 35,000 hours, which gets us to 87,500. And then when we're looking at our fixed overhead over or under allocated for the period, it's going to be our absorbed minus our actually incurred. And in this case, we have a 32,500 rand under recovery, which is basically arising from the 87,000 over there and the 120 actual. Okay, it's very straightforward. Again, these are marks that you should be getting for next to nothing, right? So that was it for this video. If you enjoyed the video and you feel that you've gotten some sort of value out of it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we will be uploading a lot more of these, and it just makes it easier for us as well that you've subscribed, you click on the bell icon, you receive an automatic notification each time we make an upload or do a new upload. So it's really just benefiting you guys as well, right? Departmental rates will be discussed in the video after this one, so please make sure that you are subscribed and that you actually receive notification for that video. And then if you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it. We really would like to help as many students as we can, as I've said. So if you can really get it around to as many students as possible, that's good for us. Please also follow us on all of our other social media channels, because we are trying to reach out to as many students as possible, making use of social media, and it's been working out very well so far. So yeah, please just stay in touch with us, and yeah, please leave a comment in the comments over here if you have any questions, and we'll see you in the next video.